I thank you all for coming today. This is my teacher, Shriya, who I met a year ago through Carrie Hayworth. Just so delighted to have him with us, and so delighted to have you with us.
What's the subject today?
Upanishads.
Well,
I start with a prayer to the Gurus before we go ahead. Khanda mandala karam vyaptam yena charasharam tatpadam darshitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha ajnanatimmirandasya jnananjanam shalakaya chakshurmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri. Now the rest will be in English. I'm not going to talk in Sanskrit. It's basically a prayer to the great teachers who have been here from time immemorial, cutting across religions, caste, creeds, and the spiritual beings have no such differentiations. Right? So the subject today is the Upanishads. I'm sure many people would have heard of the Upanishads. Let me explain. These are the books of wisdom of ancient India, which have the essence of the wisdom of the spiritual teachings of the Indian sages. Now, when I say Indian sages, since they originated in India, I said Indian sages, but it applies to all sages actually, because truth is universal. It's not confined to any particular place or system or person and so on. Now, at a conservative estimate, the Upanishads are 2,000 years old, whereas we traditionally think it's much more, but the anthropologists and historians say they are about at least 2,000 years old. You know, they form part of the Vedas, the most ancient spiritual literature available probably in the world, and which originated in India are the Vedas. The Vedas, there are 4 Vedas. There are Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharva. You don't have to remember the names. There are 4 Vedas. And out of all these 4 Vedas, first portion of the Veda, which is called the Samhita, is to do with the hymns and the songs sung by the rishis, who had a revelation of the truth in an altered state of consciousness. After the Samhita portion comes what is called the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas deal with the rituals to be done every day by people who would like to pursue, or in pursuit of wisdom and truth. And ultimately, in Vedantic, in Vedic literature, the ultimate goal of a human being is called not salvation, but freedom. Freedom is the greatest salvation. It's called moksha. Moksha actually means to be freed of all limitations. Free of all limitations. So the Brahmanas are the daily practices for a person to do so that the mind gets purified and moves towards the much more abstract things, or let's say subtler things. And the next portion is called the Aranyaka. Now this is very interesting. Aranyaka part of the Vedas were taught in the forest hermitages, where the great teachers, the rishis as they are called, had their schools of wisdom, where the student went and stayed, not one, maybe many, stayed with them for quite some time and studied the teachings that came from them. Now it's very important that they live with the teacher for various reasons. One is that the teacher has to figure out if the student is fit to receive this, or is he ready, or is she ready to receive it. 2, the student can also figure out if this is the right teacher for him. Because the teachings may be good, the teacher may be good, but he may not be a particular person's cup of tea. You understand? So it's required. Also, you learn a lot by watching a spiritual teacher, apart from what you learn from him. So part of the wisdom is non-verbal. It comes through living with somebody, practicing, moving, walking, talking. I can sit here and talk philosophy, but when I go out, the touchstone of finding out if a person is really moved forward in this field is he kinder? Has he become kinder? Has he become more compassionate? Is his mind tranquil under all circumstances? How about his ego? Is it blown up too much? You see, these are the things that one finds out by living with the teacher. Right? And also, then you get instructions on how to lead your life day to day. Because this is not pure philosophy, it also is a practical way of living. All theory can be useful, but it's not going to be a great help until one actually sees. Because the Upanishads talk about truth as a reality, palpable reality, not as something far away somewhere, which you discover after you die. There's no point. You don't know after you die where we go. So it has to be found now. So in the Aranyaka portion of the Vedas, these great rishis who had their ashrams, or who had their residence in the forest, taught the students who came to them how to proceed on this path to be finally free. Now, the last portion of the Vedas is called the Upanishad. The Upanishads actually are part of the Aranyakas, which means the wisdom that was taught in the forest academies. Now, we would like to look at the word Upanishad to find out what it means. Sanskrit is a language, ancient language. There is no meaningless word in Sanskrit. Every word has a meaning in the sense that all words, all nouns are formed from verbs. It means every noun in Sanskrit is formed out of a verb. It's a word of action. There is action there. But unfortunately in India, Sanskrit is now called a dead language. Actually, it's so alive because every word, every noun, the basis of every noun is a verb. And a verb, is action, movement. So, Upanishad. We divide the word Upanishads into 3 syllables. One is Upa, first. The other is Ni. Why am I explaining this? Because it's very important before we go into the actual Upanishad to understand what it stands for. Is it merely something to be uttered or chanted? Or is it something to be understood? So the word Upa, the next syllable is Ni, N-I. If you write Upa in English, it is you. I wish I had a little board or something to talk to you. Do you have any?
I'll go for you.
So, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
So, Upa, Ni, and the last syllable is Shat. Now if you write it in English, it is S-H-A-D, Shat. Upa, U-P-A, and Ni, N-I. So Upa, Ni, Shat. Right? So as I said, it's one of the most ancient texts available to us. And there are many Upanishads. There are over 108 Upanishads. But of them, the most important are 11 Upanishads, which are called the principal Upanishads. And they happen to be the oldest of the lot. The earliest Upanishads are the most important Upanishads. And they are about 11 in number, because most of the great teachers who came later have written commentaries on these Upanishads. which shows how important they are. Okay. Now the word Upanishad. Upa, the first syllable Upa, means close together. Come means near, N-E-A-R, near. Close, not close, but close. Now, which means this is a knowledge that comes to one. And one sits close to the teacher. Not only physically close, but also when the minds come close to each other. When the minds are near each other. So, most of the Upanishads are in the form of dialogues. So therefore, for a dialogue, you need to have a certain understanding and a closeness. Otherwise, the dialogue becomes argument. Dialogue is not an argument. A dialogue is not a fight. It's not a quarrel. I'm not trying to prove something and you're not trying to prove something. It's to sit together and understand. Together. A wise man I knew many years ago used to say that it's like two friends, close friends, sitting in a park on a bench on a beautiful evening, sharing their thoughts and trying to figure out various things. This is the meaning of the word near, Upa. It also means that the minds of the people who are teaching as well as studying are coming together close. The other is that this is not meant for all and sundry. This is only for those who are really seriously interested in walking on the path of the truth. Therefore, it was almost whispered. So it's called the great secret, the Rahasya. Now you must understand, those days there was no microphone and no loudspeakers. So to hear someone talking softly, you have to sit close to them. Here we have eliminated the loudspeaker, I'm glad. So, this is Upa. It also means, Upa also means, to move closer to the truth. Why can't we say to merge with the truth? Why did the Rishis say to move close to the truth? Because when you go very close to the truth, which is like the glowing sun in all its glory, you are no more. So there is no you to merge. As long as you are there, the truth in all its majesty cannot be. So this is Upa. Now, if you look into the Sanskrit dictionaries, you'll find many more meanings for Upa. But this is the main, the important meaning for Upa. Now, the second syllable is Ni. We'll leave that for the time being and go to the last, Shad. Now, Shad, S-H-A-D, if you write it in English, means to sit down. Sit. Now, this is very significant because now all of you are sitting down and I am sitting down. If you stand up, I know that you are going away, you don't listen. Or if I stand up, you think, maybe he's going to walk out. So sitting down physically is an indication that one is settled down and is listening to what is being said. You can hear me then? So, now it also means, Shad also means, not only physically sit, but that the mind has also settled down, sat down. You know how the mind is. Oh, thank you. You know how the mind is. It can never sit down. It keeps moving. We might be sitting down, but the mind is moving. Right? You know that. It's constantly in movement. So, Shad also means that the mind has settled down. It's sitting down. There is no movement. It's completely become still and tranquil. That's the meaning of sitting down. Now if the mind can sit down and become completely tranquil, the aim of the Upanishad is already served. Because what the Upanishad was trying to teach you is that in the silence, when the mind has become tranquil and is not moving here and there, zigzag from place to place, from thing to thing, from object to object, when it has settled down, then in that silence, the possibility of finding the truth reveals itself. Therefore, sitting down is very, very important. So as I said, not only physically, but that the mind also has to settle down, sit down. Now, shad has another meaning in Sanskrit. It's also very important. It means to shake up. It's a completely opposite meaning. It means to, a word in Sanskrit may have up to 16 meanings. We are looking at the most important thing. Now, shad also means to shake up. Now, when you say shake up, it means to many things. One is shake one up from the sleep of ignorance. Wake you up. Or wake me up, usually, either way. So, wake someone up, shake one up. When somebody is fast asleep, how do you wake? You call first, then you touch. No. So this shaking up, is shake one up from the sleep of ignorance, the sleep of no knowledge of the truth. It also means to shake up all the favorite theories that one held about life and turn it upside down. We have, as we go into some of the particular Upanishads, we'll find out why this is used. So we have many ideas which are because the way we are born, the place we are born, our parents, the knowledge that we acquire during our young age, the experiences which we had. All this is the data from which we base our knowledge on, right? So you very often hear people saying, I have a framework of logic, my rational framework as I call it, and I look at everything through my rational framework. What they're trying to say is that I'm not an irrational being. I think. Okay, fine, that's great. I have a rational framework. Now, while I'm introducing the Upanishad, I'm not actually using the words from any Upanishad right now. But when I talk, please understand that this is the essence of the Upanishadic teachings. Yeah. So, what does it mean by shaking up and changing your viewpoint, turning everything upside down? That's the only way you can get out of this framework which one has created. When I say I have my rational framework, I don't function outside my rational framework. Fine, that's all right. But what we should understand, as human beings, we have only 5 senses of perception, 5 instruments of perception. You know them. What are they?
Ears and
eyes to see, ears to hear, nose to smell, tongue to taste, touch. These are the 5 sensory inputs that we have, all human beings. I don't think most human beings, let's put it that way. Now, when we say this is my rational framework through which I operate, it means that the data that is collected through these 5 sense organs goes to, these are the inputs that go into the brain. I'm using the word brain deliberately instead of saying the mind. Goes into the brain, which is a supercomputer, and the brain processes this data which comes from the 5 sense organs and manufactures a theory in as rational a way as possible. But the inputs are only from the 5 senses. We don't have access to any other input. There are, of course, we'll come to this. Now, what we should understand is that these 5 instruments of perception that we have are very, very limited. Example, not only limited, they may also be quite illusory. Every morning when we wake up, we see the sun rise. I mean, if we wake up early enough, we see the sun rise. And then, when do you wake up? You know? Well, don't worry about it. My son also wakes up quite late. So, because the youngsters nowadays work quite a bit in the night. They're at the computer, they're doing various things. So what I'm trying to say is that we get up in the morning and we see the sunrise. And then in the evening, we see the sunset. But even a schoolboy knows that the sun neither rises nor sets. The world that moves, the earth. What do our eyes say? What do our instruments of perception? I say that the sun is rising and setting. So can we depend completely on the sense perceptions? Can't. Now, apart from that, they are incomplete. You hear a bell ring. After a while you don't hear it because you think, now the ringing has stopped. But believe me, you ask a scientist who works on sound, he will tell you that the ring is still going on. But your ears are not built to listen to the higher frequencies which are there, or lower frequencies. Because your ears are made, they can catch only a certain frequency. After that they can't. You know that there's something called a dog whistle. Human beings can't hear it, the dogs can hear it. So our ear, all our sense organs, therefore, are very, very, you know that if you put your hand into hot water and cold water, you get different impressions. Sometimes you think the cold is hot and the hot is cold. So you cannot think. All I'm saying is that they're imperfect. So the data that you get is incomplete and imperfect, the inputs. Therefore, this thing which we so proudly call our rational framework is at best incomplete. And maybe imperfect also. And in some cases illusory. Right? Okay. So then what do? The rishis who taught us the Upanishads, not only the Upanishads. I have made a very close study of things like the Kabbalah, the Sophia of the early Christians, the Gnostics, and the Sufis. Right? In all these books of wisdom, they say, teachings of wisdom, that we have, all human beings, potentially, not actually, have other instruments of perception hidden in their system, which when awakened and brought into operation, increases our perceptions, widens our perception. And therefore the inputs become much more than the normal five senses. And therefore then your rational framework becomes multidimensional. It's not just even three-dimensional, it becomes multi-dimensional. And in a three-dimensional world, you cannot even understand if there's a fourth dimension. Because we are limited to these inputs. But there are other instruments of perception in the human system which can be activated through various practices. But for that first you have to know that they exist. And the Upanishads do the work of saying, yeah, they exist.